Hi, I'm Ali Romero, and welcome to Ali Cooks. For one of my first YouTube channel videos, I had to share with you the chicken parm meatballs that we made on the Great Food Truck Race in Alaska. This is a recipe that I know like the back of my hand. We made hundreds, if not thousands of these while we were on the show. And truth be told, it's actually a recipe I haven't made once since I've been back from Alaska. The kids have been begging me to make it, and it's taken me a little bit of, I needed a little bit of a breather from that one. So today I'm going to share this recipe with you. It's made up of two main components. The first is a homemade marinara sauce, and the second is the chicken parm meatballs themselves. Super quick and easy for a weeknight meal, but also very cool and kind of fun to do on a weekend with family or friends. So anyway, let's get started on the sauce, because while that's simmering away, it gives us a chance to focus on the meatballs. So if you have not made your own homemade marinara sauce before, I'm going to show you how quick and easy it is to do it. And what I've got here is a yellow onion that we're just going to make some horizontal cuts through. And then you just cut through vertically. And then always tuck your fingers so you don't lose any limbs. If you saw episode 1, you know that that can happen in the kitchen no matter where you are at any time, so you always got to be careful. So we've got a yellow onion all chopped up. And the next thing we're going to do is preheat the stovetop. Let's see, preheat the pan to about a medium heat. And the reason we're doing a medium heat is that we don't want to necessarily get color on the onions. We're just looking to kind of like soften them, get them translucent, and to get them cooked through, because nobody wants crunchy onions in their homemade marinara. That would not be good homemade marinara. So we're going to stay away from crunchy onions today. So once the pan heats up a little bit, I'm going to add in some extra virgin olive oil, which I've got here right now. And it's really just enough to kind of coat the pan and get that warming up. This is one of my favorite kitchen tools. This is my bench scraper. So a lot of times it's used in baking. I use it really just as it is, like as a bench scraper to get up all of the onions and garlic without spilling half of them on the floor. Comes in really handy. So these are going to get added into the pan. And you want to use one if you have with the deep sides, because since we're going to add so many different components and tomatoes and all of that into it, it's great to have a nice deep-sided saute pan that you can use kind of to make it like a one-ish pan meal. I love a one-pan meal. This one is going to need 2 pans, but this one will help you get all the sauce and everything, and it can go into the oven, so you've got it down. All right, next thing we're going to do is mince some garlic. So the garlic that I have, I'm going to chop it up here, and really you just want to smash it. And then we're going to run our knife through it. So once you get all of that smashed, you kind of line it up. Again, tuck your fingers and just give it a nice mince through this way. Okay. Oh, got an onion in there. So that it's nice and minced up. And I'm going to use half of this in the marinara sauce, and I'm going to use half of it in the chicken parm meatballs. So you want it to be a nice fine mince. And we'll just kind of divide that half and half and put that right into a little bowl till we're ready to use it. All right, so the onions we're going to give a little stir. Again, not looking to get any color, just looking to have a nice translucent. And I'm going to bring you over to the stove so that you can see what's going on here. So there they are, doing their thing. Next thing that's going to go in is the minced garlic. I've also got, actually I'll run you through all of the ingredients. So the next thing that's going in is half of this minced garlic, some salt and pepper, a little bit of tomato paste. If you have red wine, that's also a really nice addition to marinara sauce. For some reason, we don't really end up with extra red wine around here. I don't know what happens. I don't know. But anyway, if you have red wine, throw a dash of red wine in there. It's a great way to use up A couple, last night or the night before's, I don't know. You're crazy if you have red wine, maybe left over, but if you do have red wine, go ahead and use it. This is a combo of some fresh parsley and basil, which I'm going to throw in there also. Some red pepper flakes, a little bit of dried Italian sweet seasoning, I add that as well. And then San Marzano tomatoes. So these are crushed and they're San Marzano. Be careful because they're not always San Marzano. If they say San Marzano style, they might not be the real thing. And there really is, I think there's a big difference in flavor and kind of like the difference in how the sauce turns out if they're actual San Marzano tomatoes and not like, the knockoffs. But those are my personal favorite if you can find them. Okay, so onions have had a chance to kind of get softened. So I'm going to add in half of this garlic and some tomato paste. So tomato paste is going in. And this really just adds a nice depth of flavor. Like I said, red wine will do the trick too, but if you don't have red wine, it's nice to have the tomato paste. And if you don't have the tomato paste, or if you have both, I was going to say if you have both, just add both in. Then it's even better. Okay, so next we're going to give that a little stir. With the tomato paste, the reason why you're putting that in before the crushed tomatoes is that you really want to give the tomato paste a chance to kind of cook its flavor into like more of a, like meld the flavors together. Same thing like when you're cooking with raw flour, you don't ever want to dump raw flour into a pan and then just immediately add other ingredients. You kind of want to cook out that raw taste, and it's the same thing that kind of goes with tomato paste. So give it a minute to just kind of like get combined with the garlic and the onions and just kind of like develop that nice flavor by getting heated through. And then I'm going to add the rest of the dry ingredients. We've got some red pepper flakes, just for a little kick of spice. Some of the Italian dried seasonings. And this whole recipe is on my website, so you can see all of the exact amounts and everything that I'm putting in. Let's go salt and pepper next. And this also is going to help sweat out the onions so that they will release moisture. And then, like I said, we're not looking to caramelize them. We just want to make them translucent and kind of warmed through. And then in goes the San Marzano tomatoes. And I'm going to add 2 cans today. This is always a great sauce to have on hand. And if you don't use it all, you can always freeze it and use it for another recipe or another time, another dish. So I'm going to add 2 cans of those and give that a little stir. Okay, the final thing that goes into the marinara, again, how easy was that? That was like, what, 5 minutes? That was so quick and easy. And then you just let it go. And the longer you let it go, the more flavor you're gonna develop. So if it starts getting too reduced or too thick, you can always add, again, if you have a little bit more red wine, you can add red wine to it. You can add water to it and just kind of keep reducing it down. And you're just gonna make an amazing homemade marinara that has so much full flavor and just tastes so fresh and delicious. And like I said, if you end up with extra, you can always freeze it. And then on a busy weeknight or when you have something going on, pull that out and you've got marinara ready to go. And that's just as easy as your store-bought jar of sauce. The last thing that's gonna go in are some of these fresh herbs. So this is basil and parsley, and it's equal amounts. And I'm putting a little bit of each in. And then the beauty of that is that's just gonna cook while we go ahead and focus on the chicken parm meatballs. I'm gonna give this one last stir. All right, I'm gonna give this one last stir before I kind of just let it go, and I'm bringing it up to a simmer. And then I'll just reduce it down. Okay, so moving on to the chicken parm meatballs. So the first thing that we have is some ground chicken. Now, I've had questions before about white meat versus dark meat. If it were my choice personally, I would go first of all with dark meat. The reason being is that you have more flavor, more fat. They go hand in hand, unfortunately. But it will make sure that your meatballs don't get dried out at all. So if you can go for a combo, maybe like a half pound of white meat, half pound of dark meat, and kind of combine them, you'll end up with a meatball that's juicy and flavorful and is just like delicious in the sauce. Okay, so into the chicken parm meatballs. I'm going to show you all the ingredients here. So we are going in with 1 beaten egg, basil and parsley again, fresh, panko breadcrumbs and grated Parmesan cheese, and a little bit more salt and pepper. You always have to add flavor and seasoning to each step of the process. You want every component of your dish to always have a ton of flavor so that when somebody goes to taste it, they're tasting it on a number of different levels. Okay. And then you just got to get your hands a little dirty. You got to get in there. So you combine it around, and the panko crumbs will help everything bind together, and the egg will as well. But this is kind of it's chicken instead of beef or pork or veal, so they end up a little bit of a wetter consistency, which is totally fine, because what we're going to do is actually end up breading them again in panko breadcrumbs when I roll them out into small, kind of golf ball sized. And I guess while we're talking about that, I also get the question often, like, what do you serve these with? My personal favorite is to serve them in a roll and make chicken parm meatball sliders out of them. But it would also be delicious over like polenta to, absorb all those amazing flavors. It would be great in, with some roasted potatoes. It would be great with, as a low carb option with just some, like a little arugula salad on the side. I do that when I'm trying to pretend that I'm being good, because this has so much cheese and deliciousness, but then there's that balance, which I love to try to keep in mind too. Okay, so the next thing I've got is a sheet tray lined baking sheet here with an ice cream scooper. And I'm not even gonna bother washing my hands yet, because my hands are they're gonna get dirty again. So I've got about golf ball sized. And the reason I like this size is, again, because if you they're gonna end up kind of like growing in size as you bread them. So as you kind of toss them around in the panko, don't be afraid to get dirty. They're gonna kind of grow in size as you bread them. So that's why I like this size. If you get going too big, then next thing you know, you don't have a slider, you have like one ginormous meatball. So I like this size. This size seems to work well. And don't be afraid to kind of pack the panko crumbs onto the meatball, because it'll just kind of help them stick a little bit better. So this is a point where I have my oven preheated to 400, but if you don't have your oven preheated, this is definitely the time to get that started while you roll the chicken parm meatballs out. The next thing that's coming is that separate skillet I showed you earlier, where we're gonna shallow fry the meatballs just to kind of get them golden brown. And they won't be cooked through all the way, but they'll be cooked through enough where they can finish cooking in the sauce in the oven when they have the cheese on them, so that they get just cooked through and everybody's happy, all in the pool together. And this is about a pound, a little over a pound of ground chicken that I'm using today. Depends how big your family is or how many you'd be feeding, but it's usually about a pound and a half is usually about right we're a family of 5, so this is about how much I usually get to make this many chicken parm meatballs. Should be like 10 to 12. So everybody gets a couple and everybody's happy. And if there's any leftovers, then whoever gets them first the next day for lunch is the lucky person. First one to the fridge at our house. All right, looks like we've got just maybe like 1 or 2 more. We'll split these guys up. All right, last one. I'm gonna wash my hands and get that pan behind me started with the oil for the shallow fry. Okay, so I'm going to show you our sauce is simmering away. It's got just a couple bubbles coming up. It's doing its thing. And like I said, as that cooks, it will just continue to develop more and more flavor. So that's going to be fantastic. Now we've got the chicken parm meatballs, and the oil in the skillet is about 1/2 inch up the side of the pan. So shallow frying is not the same as deep frying. So deep frying, you would be fully submerged. Actually, on the Great Food Truck Race, we had fryers where we could actually dunk like 10 of them at a time, which was super helpful. But in the home kitchen, not a lot of people have fryers where they can, you know, deep fry 10 at a time. So this is a great home application, but you can see how it goes back and forth easily. So there's about 1/2 inch up the side of the skillet, depending upon whatever size skillet you're using. And the idea is that you're not just kind of like, you know, searing it. You're more submerging the protein, you know, a little bit further, but yet it's not submerged all the way like it would like in a deep fry, like if you were going to deep fry chicken or something like that. So while the oil is heating up, that's what we're looking for, is just kind of like a medium heat to get the chicken parm meatballs golden on all sides, so that I can put them right into that bubbling marinara sauce and then put some cheese over the top and stick them in the oven. So that'll take a couple of minutes to heat up. I'm gonna grab some mozzarella cheese for the top of these before they go into the oven. And then we're pretty close to showing you how this is all gonna come together. So the pan needs a couple of minutes to heat up, usually to get to that correct frying temperature. And I'm gonna see how this goes, but I'm probably not gonna put all of these in at once. And the reason being is that you really don't wanna crowd the pan when you're doing any type of searing, sauteing, shallow frying, because for a number of reasons. If you add in too many at one time, then you end up crowding the pan, you drop the temperature of the oil, and that way you end up with not being able to get that kind of like golden crispy crust that you're looking for. So I'm probably gonna put maybe most of these in, and then I'll do a second batch. But the oil should be ready to go now. And I can see that it's almost ready because it has like a little shimmer to it. So I'm gonna place these in, and then again, I'll bring you over so that you can see what's going on over here. So it has that nice sizzle sound. We might be able to fit all of these in here. Oh, not quite. Okay, not quite. We'll leave 2 of those for the next batch. It's not worth squeezing them in and having them not cook properly. So I'll bring you over so that you can take a peek and see what these look like. So they're sizzling away. Sauce is looking good. And those really are only gonna need like a couple of minutes per side. So, and I try to rotate them to just get them like a nice, even golden brown on each side. And it's a good idea also to kind of remember the order that you placed them in. I usually go like, try to go clockwise, starting from closest to me, so like 9 o'clock, and I work around, and that way I remember where I started, so I know which one should be ready to flip over first. So these are looking good. Go all the way around the clock, and we ended up in the middle. All right. Those are getting a nice golden brown, and this is really the color that we're looking for on all sides. So it's pretty easy. You just kind of keep turning them until you get that nice golden crust on all sides. Then they're going right into the pan with the simmering sauce. And I'm going to top them with some shredded mozzarella. And then they're going into the oven to finish cooking for a few minutes. All right. So one of the biggest challenges we had on the Great Food Truck Race with making meatballs and having meatballs really be the theme of our truck, which was so much fun because there's so many things that you can do with meatballs. But I mean, there's a lot of time and energy and everything that goes into like rolling out so many meatballs. So that's why I say I haven't made them since I've been back home. That we made so many meatballs, and it was great to be able to share the food with the people of Alaska. Everybody was so awesome. The people who came out to the truck and who we met, it was an amazing experience of a lifetime that I'll never forget. But it was great to be able to cook food and then share it with people, and then see their reaction from it. It was truly awesome. All right, these are almost done. All right, I'm actually going to shut them off. And I want to show you what they look like, because this is like the perfect golden brown that you're looking for. So it's exactly what you're looking for. And I turn them off, and they're going right into the pan with the sauce. I'll give this one last stir. And I'm just going to nestle them in so they're like halfway up the marinara sauce. Gonna nestle them in. And the reason I nestle them in halfway and not all the way is that you really want to leave some of the top exposed so that, number one, it stays crunchy and you get that true chicken parm crunch when you bite in. And so that when we put the cheese over the top, that you have like the cheese, the crunch, the sauce. It's almost like layers. So that's why I leave the very tops of these exposed. All right. Okay, everybody's in the pool. I'm going to take that pan off the heat because that is really hot. And now I'm going to top them with some cheese. So when I do this, I really just put like a little bit of cheese on top of each one. Don't be shy. This is not a time to this is not the time to count the carbs, like count the calories. This is a time to just embrace it, go for it, because you're going to be really bummed if you're the one who gets the meatball that doesn't have as much cheese as someone else's meatball, then you're gonna be really sad and you're gonna wish that you had more cheese on your meatball. So don't be that person who does that to somebody else. So put as much cheese as you can on kind of each little meatball, pile it on top. Hopefully at this point your oven is all preheated. All right, I'm not gonna be stingy here with the cheese. All right, so we used all of that cheese, and this is what they look like. And now they're going into the oven, 400 degrees on the top rack for about 5 to 10 more minutes. Okay, while those are cooking, I have one more trick to show you, and that's how I chiffonade basil. Easy for me to say, right? Okay, so this is one of my favorite tricks, and I want to say that I learned it in culinary school, but I can't remember where I learned it. This is where you take fresh basil, and you really just take the leaves and place them on top of each other. Start with the largest one on the bottom and kind of work your way up as much as you can. And then I'll show you what you're going to do here. So you take the basil and you really want to wrap it as tight as you possibly can, like a little cigar. And then you're going to use your knuckles as a guide. Again, you don't want to like leave your fingers out because you could chop off, you know, part of your finger, part of a nail. So use your knuckles as a guide, and then you've always got, you know, a way to keep your knife where it's supposed to be, and just really thin little strips. And the reason I love this technique is if you just try to chop basil without doing it like this, sometimes it'll get all dark and kind of just like blackened, and you won't end up with these pretty, beautiful, you know, chiffonade basil. This basil is a little bit wet. Anyway, trust me when I say that these are nice, beautiful, you know, chiffonade basil pieces that'll go on top of our chicken parm meatballs. Okay, so that's that, and meatballs are in. So I think we're just going, okay, so the basil is ready to go, and we're just going to let the meatballs finish for a few more minutes, and then we'll check on them and see how they are, and then we'll get ready to try one. All right, I'm gonna give the meatballs a little check and see how they're looking. They're looking good, but they definitely need another minute or so. So while those are finishing up, there's a couple of other things, my favorite type of meatballs that maybe I'll make for another YouTube video. So first one that I have is just kind of like my OG meatballs, like the ones I make all the time with beef. So those are, I like the combo of beef and pork and sometimes veal. So beef and pork, and this is another one that we made on the show. But beef and pork, or with sausage, it really adds in, like, you get the beef. The 80-20 is always the one I use. Again, you're looking for a nice combo of flavor and fat. And where the pork sausage brings that in is like another component of flavor and fat. So when you mix those together, and then the veal is a third one if you wanted to use veal. If not, just even the sausage, the pork sausage and the beef together make a really nice meatball. That's one of my favorites. But if you get this recipe down with just the components that I put in, so with some sort of a binder like breadcrumbs, or in this case panko, egg, some seasoning, whether it be dried or fresh, salt and pepper, a beaten egg, some garlic, you've really got yourself like a great recipe that no matter kind of what meat you bring in, you can make a great meatball. I mean, even if you wanted to make turkey meatballs, you could do a really nice, healthy option to do turkey meatballs and use those same things that you put into the meatballs and just use turkey meat instead. Again, I would always recommend using dark meat if you can, only because you're gonna end up with a meatball that's a little bit more flavorful and has a little bit more fat, and definitely won't have the tendency to dry out as much as white meat would. So that's my recommendation. I think the meatballs should be just about done. So let's take a look. All right, these are looking pretty good. Okay, there they are. I think they're ready to pull out and try one. Be careful lifting this out. This is always really heavy. You don't want to go to all that work and then drop the meatballs. Or crash your oven. Okay, another thing I do, I always leave one of these. I'm the first one to tell people, be careful, the pan is hot. The pan doesn't look hot, and then I go over and I grab it. So I always leave one of these, kind of like this. And if not for anyone else, at least just for me, so that I don't go over and grab it, because I can't tell you how many times, unfortunately, I've done that. Okay, so now I've got the chopped parsley. I've got the chiffonade of basil, and it's gonna go right over the top. And the meatballs are ready. Get a pretty glamour shot without my oven mitt on it. Okay, so let's take a bite and see how they are. I've also got some fresh Parmigiano Reggiano to grate over the top. They are chicken parm meatballs. You gotta have a ton of parm in there if you're gonna call them chicken parm meatballs. There's Parmesan cheese in the mixture, and now I'm gonna hit it with a little bit on top. Okay, maybe that was more than just a little bit, but anyway, you get the idea. It's gotta be cheesy, right? All right, so I'm gonna scoop one out here. All of the cheesy goodness. And take a bite. Oh my gosh, they're steaming hot. Try not to burn my mouth here. These look so good. We'll get a bite with all the components. So I've got the delicious homemade marinara, the chicken parm meatball coated in panko to make it nice and crunchy. the ooey gooey cheese, both mozzarella and Parmesan cheese, the fresh basil and parsley, and more Parmesan on top. It is so delicious and comforting. It's chicken parm that you know and love, but in the shape of a meatball. And like I said, it's so versatile because there's so many ways you can serve these. So if you want to serve them with a side of French fries like we did on the show, or you want to serve them with mashed potatoes or polenta, or on a hoagie roll and make it into a sandwich or a slider, you've got so many possibilities, and the flavor is incredible. So easy, comes together quickly for weeknight. Like I said, kind of fun weeknight cooking if you're gonna cook something fun for your friends or family. Definitely recommend these chicken parm meatballs. If you have a comment of anything else you'd like to see me make in the future, if you have tried making this recipe and you have comments about it or anything that you want to share, please leave a comment below. Be sure to like and subscribe so that I know you're out there, and I'll keep sharing my recipes with you, and we'll continue to cook together. So thanks for joining me today on Allie Cooks.